What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Center Ice Podcast brought to you by OCSN. I'm Brent Clemmer, joined here by Jonny Mac. How are we doing today, man?
I'm well, you?
Oh, pretty good. We've got some pretty interesting stuff on the docket for today, and a pretty solid guest coming on at 8:30 here. So well, we have a little bit of time to kill before Bill McDougall hops on. But in the meantime, the first thing we're going to bring up is the QMJHL is banning fighting. And obviously that's definitely a controversial thing in all of hockey on whether fighting should be a part of the game, but especially in junior hockey, because are these kids going to be ready to play in the NHL?
I mean, I look at it two ways. I think, yeah, they'll still be ready to play in the NHL because as we all know, the fighting aspect of that league really has changed over the years. You need to be able to play a regular shift in order to play in the NHL now. The margins are so thin and the parity is right there with the top teams. What concerns me about doing this is they're talking about a hefty. They haven't really defined what they're going to do as far as a punishment yet, but they've said it's severe. So I've heard, anyways, people I talk to, I've heard, you drop your gloves and throw a punch and you got two additional games plus that one. That's harsh, right? That's really harsh. So what that's going to bring up, and I don't want to sound like one of these old school, Don Cherry types, but at the end of the day, it's true. You're going to get a lot more stick work. You're going to get a lot. I mean, if you look at it, and if I can drop my gloves and punch you in the face, and I'm going to get 2 games, or I can spear you and get 5 minutes and maybe a game if it's bad enough. What are you going to do, right? If I can cross-check you in the face, they're still half visors, right? If I can cross-check you in the face and take out 4 or 5 of your teeth, and I'm going to get a 5-minute major and I'm gone for that game. Hey, if I'm mad at you, that's what I'm going to do. You take a poke at my goalie or maybe hit one of my teammates that's in a compromising position. That's what scares me is now it's going to be a stick swinging or, a lot more dangerous. You ask anybody that's kind of played the game and been in the trenches and fought a little bit. I'd much rather get 4 or 5 punches in the face from a 240-pound guy than get a spear in the face or a cross check in the face or things like that. That's just my opinion. We'll see where it goes. I know the entire league isn't on board, but I think they had enough to punch it through. Remains to be seen how this plays out, but certainly stay tuned.
Yeah, and it's definitely it's probably more of an experiment than anything. I wouldn't be surprised after year 1 if they do see major penalties go up that aren't fighting severely. I could see them going back to just 5 and maybe even a game. I don't think having a 2-game suspension for fighting is even an option. I mean, if they do it, they do it. But at the end of the day, there's far worse things in this game that can be done than fighting. And if they're punished less than fighting, we're going to see, like you said, an influx of more issues than we probably want to. But all in all, it'll be an interesting experiment. I do kind of feel bad for those players. I don't think it's going to affect them making it to the NHL per se, but when somebody grabs them, if they're not ready, they're because junior is, I mean, you talk about the AHL and call it the jungle. Junior tends to be where guys kind of fill into themselves and learn how they're going to play and maybe learn a different type of game that revolves more around that toughness than you would otherwise. So
traditionally, if you look at the 3 major junior leagues in Canada, right, they've all kind of evolved in different ways, but it's always kind of been you get 3 types of players or a couple of types of players from each league that are a prototypical Q guy or dub guy or O guy. As long as I can remember, the Q has produced real skilled forwards. Mario Lemieux, Paolo LaFontaine, guys like that coming out, Sidney Crosby throw in there. But you also got a lot of tough hombres, a lot of guys big heavyweights that come into the league. So it's always been a league, and you can see the province of Quebec and Atlantic Canada for that matter. They like a tough game, right? If you look at that LNAH in Quebec, that senior league, there's 5, 6, 7 fights a game in that league. Ontario has always, obviously tough guys again. They're bred in Ontario, and real, kind of all round players. The Dub has always been known for real good defensive players, real good, big, heavy defensemen. And in the Dub, honestly, everybody's tough out there. Those guys grew up in a lot of the areas, certainly where I spent a lot of time in Saskatchewan, and that's a real tough place to come out of. And if you can kind of navigate your way through, midget and some of the junior leagues out there, man, you can handle pretty much anything.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we'll leave it at that for now. It's kind of hard to predict anything, as it's just we haven't even seen it in action yet and what's going to happen with it. But kind of throwing it back to last week a little bit, we talked about how the LGBTQ jerseys and stuff had been kind of boycotted around the league, and how that kind of relays with Russian players and how it's maybe not so much their fault. However, this week it came out that a North American-born player, James Reimer, he boycotted wearing the Pride jerseys for the San Jose Sharks, and maybe he doesn't have as much of an excuse. Maybe he does. What are your thoughts on that, Jonny Mac?
You know what? I'm a Reimer fan. I was actually talking about him on our pre-deadline show, saying that I thought he would be a good candidate for the Leafs to bring back as a little bit of insurance. I got a problem with it. I really do. We're not talking about, like we talked about in a previous show, where there's a Russian player that fears persecution in his own country, and it's a new law written, blah blah. Brian Burke said it well. Okay, I don't always agree with Berkey, but he said it real well, where he said, we're not asking the players to be advocates for any cause at all. This doesn't, but wearing that Pride jersey doesn't mean that you are a supporter or pro LGBTQ. What it means is that hockey's inclusive, right? And when you see, certain players, and you said it right. I don't think he has the excuse. There's a lot of Christians in the National Hockey League that don't take a stand like this, and I didn't think it was necessary. And all it does is it shows maybe that the league and its initiatives aren't united, right? And a lot of times the Players Association and the league battle, but this is kind of this is a little bit convoluted, and it's a shame. I feel it's a step back, but it's somebody's personal belief. I wouldn't have made him eligible for that game if I was running that club. So he, just to finish off the story for anybody that doesn't know, he didn't participate in the warm up. I'm not sure if he started the game. Clem, do you know if he started the game? I know he dressed.
I don't. I know he was at least on the bench. I have no idea if he was starting that night. I kind of doubt it. He missed warm-ups and everything.
Right.
Especially as a goaltender, I kind of don't see it happening. Yeah. My biggest issue with it is that a year ago, we wouldn't have seen this. And it's kind of started with the Russian players, which is fine. It's more understandable coming from that angle than it is coming from a North American-born player.
For sure.
Like we said last week, it's one thing if you're going to be compromising your potential safety when you go home to Russia or Eastern Europe or wherever it might be. But when you're a North American-born player, I mean, it's kind of prehistoric at this point to kind of have that stand, and not to bash anyone's religious beliefs or anything, but it's just kind of not the direction that we're heading in. And like you said, Brian Burke said, it's not about trying to get you to advocate for it. It's just showing that it's allowed. It's okay. hey, everyone can come to the rink, everyone is welcome. It's not about necessarily what people think it is, and they're not getting the players to come out and say speeches and talk about all this stuff. At the end of the day, as religious beliefs, I'm not going to bash anyone for that, but I just kind of put a bad taste in my mouth, especially like when you have players like Nazem Kadri, who has he's Muslim and he has very strong religious beliefs, but he never even went out of the way to not wear something like this or come out in the public. And this is a guy that's relatively seen as an asshole in the league a lot of times. So, especially by fans.
Funny you mentioned Naz, because Reimer actually brought Naz up. And I had a problem with the way he used the context of, he said, I played with, Nazem Kadri in Toronto, and he's a Muslim. And, I have no problem with that. We were best friends. And I thought it was kind of an ignorant statement, right? You're talking about basically saying your religion is okay with that guy's religion and you were friends, but you're not going to support it just rubbed me the wrong way. And then the other, just to close up here, I know we have to move on, Clem, but we if I read some, obviously you look at social media posts on some of these things, and some of the comments really were disgusting, because you had some people kind of going, oh, you know what, I don't know if that's the right way to approach this, basically not calling Reimer out, but disagreeing with the stand that he took. And then you've got the other side that's coming out, and there's some pretty disgusting things floating around on the internet, that this kind of behavior brings those guys out of the woodwork, right? It gives them a little bit of a soapbox to get on and spew whatever beliefs that they have. And you can be anonymous on the internet and pretty much say whatever you want, but
or not anonymous, because nobody's going to punch you in the face over
right.
keyboard. But
yeah,
that's kind of, I mean, it's just the way that things are now. You see some blatantly ignorant opinions online, and I don't know. It's just kind of, it's the world we live in.
Totally agree. Yeah.
So moving on from that, Florida has been surging. Is this what we were expecting before the season? Obviously, they've been really, really good lately. They've kind of looked like they've started to gel a little bit more. I mean, obviously, coming into the season after that trade to acquire the Chuck, I mean, they sent out 2 big pieces. You kind of got a feeling that maybe they were contending for a cup, and then they fell apart. So is this kind of where you would have had them at the start of the season, how they're playing now, or is this kind of a fluke?
No, you know what? I thought they'd be a better team. And I think, eventually they will, and they're start. So they're 7-2-1 in their last 10. I think they're a point out of Pittsburgh for that second wild card spot. And I think they've got the horses to do it. And, we've talked in depth about Mac Tkachuk, and he's a playoff style guy. He's going to go out there and, put his face in front of a puck to win. And, and the other guys, when you got leaders in your room that behave like that, the other guys tend to lean towards behaving like that too. They got two goaltenders that could go on a run and win a cup. So if they could sneak in, absolutely. Paul Maurice is a veteran, wily old coach that understands the line matchups. I don't know if I'd want to play them if I was Boston. Let's put it that way. Boston, obviously, the class of the league this year. They're breaking records. They're playing the game the right way. Substantial leadership. But 7-game series, anything can happen. Island. If I was Boston, the last 2 teams I'd want to play is Florida or New York Islanders.
And they're going to get one of them likely.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at the Islanders, they're built for the playoffs. I mean, like it or not, they have a different kind of style, but they are built to do well. I mean, even for the past decade, they've been, I should say more like past 5 years, they've been very strong. They were one of the only teams that have taken that Tampa team to 7 games, that the 3 of them being Toronto, New York, and obviously the Colorado Avalanche last year. Those are the only 3 teams in the past 3 cup runs that have brought the Tampa Bay Lightning to 7 games, which is an interesting stat to me, because they've played 16 series in the past 3 years. 3 of them went 7, and they've won 2 and 7, lost 1 and 7. I mean, they didn't lose against Colorado in 7, they lost, but that's just kind of that's an interesting stat to me that the Islanders of all teams were one of the teams to do it.
Yeah.
And the other team that was right there with them was Florida for 2 years. They gave Tampa a run for their money. Tampa kind of had more grit and a little bit more, I'd say, experience, just with leadership and stuff. But I mean, coming into it, if any team's going to beat Boston or Tampa or Toronto, even, I mean, Toronto's an unproven commodity, obviously, but Tampa is a very strong team. Boston's a very strong team. We're looking at something that's going to be a lot of fun in the playoffs, at least in the East.
Oh, buckle up. You know what? I'm usually, well documented. I'm a Leaf guy. Obviously, always watch those series. And then I usually pick another one in the East and maybe one, maybe two in the West. And it's not usually because of a team. It's because of the matchup, right? I want to see some good hockey. This year, I don't know if I'll miss much, thank goodness for the PBR option now, because I think if there's 3 or 4 games going on in a night in the first round, I could be taping 2 or 3 of them for sure. At least to go back and watch them in full. Sometimes it's fun and the Blue Jays do it. I watch it, game and a half hour, right? And
the Blue Jays in 30.
Yeah, Blue Jays in 30. And you can get that on any of the platforms. I can go in and get the highlights from any game. But it doesn't tell the whole story, right? You can go in and look like you can watch 10 clips and look like one team was absolutely dominant, and they really weren't.
Well,
right?
I was writing highlight scripts and cutting highlight packs, and they teach you to basically pick a storyline and show that storyline.
Right.
So Morgan Riley, it's his birthday or whatever, scores 2 goals. All you're going to see is Morgan Riley, that entire highlight clip. Doesn't even matter if they lose. If you're in the Toronto market and Morgan Riley scores 2 goals on his birthday, that's what you're seeing.
Yep.
Just how it works. So
and funny you say that, because and I don't know if you've been reading, Clem, if you've got guys like a lot of the Howard Berger's one, basically vilified Dubas because he sent Sandin to Washington. So Sandin got a 1.5 point a game since he went there, but he's been on for 13 of the 15 goals Washington has allowed since he's gone there. So read between the lines. I could sit here and say, yeah, this guy, man, he's unreal hockey player. He's got 2.5 points a game, but his team's lost 7 or 8, and he's dash 9. No good. So
and that's where when we don't see the casual fan take on a show like this or anything like that. So it's kind of, I mean, to be honest with you, we kind of missed that a little bit, because we forget that fans don't necessarily see the whole game. Yep. They don't understand it. Like, there's a lot of fans out there that will never watch a 60-minute hockey game. They watch the highlights and they get excited and they might watch the playoffs.
Yep.
That's it. They don't actually understand what a player is doing. So when they see someone like Sandin get traded and, oh my God, he had 3 assists in his first game with his new team, it's like, oh my God, the world is ending. What are you thinking, Dubas? Like, why wasn't this guy playing 22 minutes a game for us? It's like, well, that's just not how the world works. It's actually kind of upsetting, because if people just looked a little deeper, they might not seem so ignorant and stupid, to be honest with you. Not to call anyone out, but
read between the lines.
Yeah, just go a little deeper. It's not concerning. There's teams out there that have made much worse trades than getting a first out of Rasmus Sandin. And not to turn this into a Leaf show or anything, but that's just kind of where my head's at. I don't know. But for the Leafs' big game tomorrow, taking on the Islanders, that's going to be an interesting one. I like this test. Obviously Keith's still trying out some of his line works and deep pairings and stuff, but I think that'll be a good game and a good test for them. I think that's probably the game of the night tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
well, it's funny. One of the topics we had last week was, is Makar healthy? Yeah, Makar's healthy. He's on a run right now, and if he keeps going at that pace, I would have said to you a month ago, that, engrave Erik Karlsson's name on the North today. If Cale Makar keeps doing what he's doing, he's been absolutely dominant through this, Eastern swing. Absolutely dominant. He's got the puck a lot, and he never makes a poor decision. So yeah, that race isn't over. And they're gelling at the right time. So you get these guys keeping, and McKinnon's been all world as well. He gets a puck on a stick and something happens every shift, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how they go here for the next few weeks until they get in. And if Bednar if Bednar's locked in, and I think they are now, you'll see him start to look at some different combinations and using his assets to the best of his ability to get the right combination going in. Landeskog's not playing, and was a key guy in that run. So you got to find other guys that can fit in. Somebody else just got hurt too, Lehkonen.
Yeah, Terry Lehkonen. He's good.
Real good player.
Good.
Yeah,
but I think this is
we got a question here. Al Morissette, from Fort McMurray, Alberta, via BC and Calgary, asking about Quinn Hughes. Great player. I'm gonna say something that you guys at home can debate. I've watched Quinn Hughes, and tremendous talent. I think Quinn Hughes is a forward. I think Quinn Hughes is a forward. I really do. I think the dynamic that he could bring to a line with a little bit of sandpaper on one side. I don't know if he's a center iceman or a winger, but I see him as a forward. I really do. That could play D in a pinch. Think of the guys that have done that. Brent Burns, obviously big guy. Bufflin, obviously big guy. Quinn isn't a big guy, but he's dynamic. But I see him more as a forward, to answer your question, Al. But yeah, great player.
And that's an interesting take, to say the least. I'm sure there's tons of Canucks fans out there that probably wouldn't love that, but it sounds like a page straight out of the Leafs fan page. Morgan Riley should be on the wing.
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, Quinn Hughes is a fantastic player. I think you could probably slot him anywhere on the ice, and he's going to make an impact.
Yeah,
I think you're right. Maybe he is more of an offensively. I mean, he's going to be a defensive player. He's a defenseman, but he's. It would be interesting to see them try that, especially considering their season's done. They have nothing to play for. So,
yeah, for sure.
And I mean, it's possible he just has absolutely no interest. Which, I mean, most guys that play D want to play a little bit of forward. I don't think anyone's going to turn that down. And I mean, as soon as you start drawing those comparisons to Bufflin, Burns, and stuff, that might excite him into trying it a little bit, because there's been some very good players to do that and have some fantastic success with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we've got about 7 more minutes before we bring in our guest here. Jonny Mac, what are your takes on what do you think is going to change in the Atlantic Division? Who do you think ends up getting in?
Oh, I think it's locked. I really do. I think I think Boston, Tampa, and Toronto aren't going to get caught. I think Florida gets in. I really do. Washington has played themselves right out of it. Not sure about that, and some of the moves that McClellan made at the deadline. They were in. They were right there. They were within a point or two. He basically, gave away the opportunity for them to, but you can look at it on the other hand. Were they going to win this year? Probably not. Right.
No,
not with the East. So he got some assets, and, they're retooling a little bit, but, at the end of the day, this is the race for Ovi to catch Gretz. And I think that's kind of what they're looking at, and they're bringing in, guys like Sundin that move the puck well, and offense. They want to do it in the next couple of years. So But yeah, I don't see the top three changing, but I do see Florida getting in. Ottawa had a chance, but they went on a little bit of a slide. But they could have been in the mix too, and to a lesser extent, Buffalo and Detroit. But they've all kind of played a little bit of a good game, bad game, good game, bad game, and when guys like the Leafs and Tampa and Boston's winning 9 out of 10, and Toronto and Tampa have been winning 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5. Right, that's tough to gain any ground when the teams ahead of you just don't really stumble.
Yeah, I agree. And Al, we'll get to this one right after this interview. We have Bill McDougall backstage right now. So
I got number 1. I bet you Bedard goes number 1. There you go.
There you go. There's number 1. But without further ado, we would love to welcome Bill McDougall to the show. Bill, how are you doing?
Hi guys, great to be here tonight.
Hey Bill, how are you?
Jonny Mac, good to see you.
You too. How's the weather in Cape Breton?
Yeah, it was a little windy today, but I was the power might have went off. I was thinking there today a couple times.
Yeah.
But it was brisk today, but our weather's been great here. Our weather's changing, Johnny. I know, like, you've been back for a while, right? So
yeah,
and you must know the difference, the change, and see the change and all that.
We got some video issue here, Brent. Do you know?
Yeah,
what that
I see that. Yeah.
I'm not sure what's going on there. My guess is it's just a glitchiness
just
part
a little
on.
bit of a glitch.
But
do you want to try to log out and log back in, Bill, and see if that fixes it?
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah. All right, bud.
Well, we'll get Bill situated here and figure this out. Obviously, we don't want it to be the viewing of completely shaky screen for the entire time.
No.
Skylar Walker comments, great pod. Thank you. We really appreciate it. Keep checking it out.
For Al Morris at number 2, I'm going to say Adam Fantilli.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not even really beyond Bedard. I'm not really even following the prospects too heavily this year. I'm too invested in what's happening in the NHL right now. That's more of a off-season one for me. We do a draft show. We will be doing a draft show this year. But yeah, we're just figuring it out here with Bill McDougall. Stay tuned for a great interview. There's going to be a lot of fun. He played in the NHL for 10 years. Or not in the NHL. He played pro for 10 years and played all over the place. So there's really there's going to be a lot of good stories. Played in Europe, played in North America. Jonny Mac knows a little bit more about him than I do just because he knows him personally. But we're just waiting for him to reconnect here. Sorry for the little bit of a break.
So just looking at the draft rankings, we'll wrap that up. I'm a big believer, Al, that I don't like to pick other than the obvious ones that I gave you until I see who's drafting the spots. Right? Look at the draft last year. You had everybody in the world had Shane Wright 1, and then he goes 4. Right. And a lot of times now it comes to need. Obviously the first 2 are going to be the first 2. There's a kid that I've watched since we lived in Martinsville, Saskatchewan for 10 years. And he came in to play Bantam. 2 of them, the Riley Height and Braden Yeager. So interesting story. Both of those kids had applied for exceptional status the same year as Bedard. So they're all the same birth year. They were denied, and Bedard was given the exceptional status so he could play as an underage in the dub. So a lot of people in Saskatchewan are like, wow, this kid better be special because these 2 kids are special, and they were and are. So Braden, I think Braden's ranked in the top 10. Braden Yeager, he's with Moose Jaw, and then Riley Height is with Prince George, and he's going to be a first rounder as well. But I think a team, if they're looking for some dynamic. I think Jaeger could sneak into that top 5 out of maybe, I don't know whether he's in the 7 or 8, projected spot right now. But yeah, good question, Al. How about Sebastian Cosa? That's so Al. I know Al, and he's a good golf buddy from Alberta, and his buddy, another golf guy there, John Casa. He's his boy Sebastian. So we've been able to be fortunate enough to kind of follow his career through Al and Johnny, and he's going to be a tremendous goalie for Detroit. I can't wait to see him get up there. Oh, 5th, wow, that's good. That's where I see him. Bill back?
He's still just connecting his camera and stuff. He's backstage, but I don't know what's going on with. Still says his devices aren't connected. So is there anything that you're looking forward to other than the great matchups? Is there any players coming up through the systems or that you think are going to get hot throughout the playoffs that you're kind of really looking forward to?
I'm interested, again, to go back to Toronto. I'm interested in how Matt Nyes is gonna do. I really am. I think he could be an impact guy that could come in here and make a difference. Hate to compare him to the impact that Cale Makar had coming in a few years ago, but the potential is there. He's a big, heavy, big shot, pro shot. He's up for Big Ten or Midwest, whatever, conference player of the year. Hobie Baker, huge pedigree, Arizona kid. I think he's going to come in and have some synergy right away with Austin Matthews. So that's who I'm looking forward to seeing.
Is that where you see him playing up with Matthews, or do you think he's going to be just slotted in on a power play or something with him, sit him in front of the net kind of thing?
They're gonna have a top 9 that you can mix and match. So absolutely, he's going to get a sniff with them. I think they're gonna have to flip over rocks and find one that works, and he'll get time with some of those guys for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, just having another unknown commodity coming up through the system that I say unknown, but we know what he's capable of in the NCAA. It's going to be really interesting to see how he makes an immediate impact in the way that maybe Chris Kreider, Cale Makar, a lot of guys have come directly out of the NCAA into the NHL, and it's proven to be a really, really, really strong development path for kids. Obviously, you're a little bit older when you come into the league rather than when you're back stuck on in the OHL and you're coming out kind of 18, 19 rather than, hopping into the AHL and stuff. It's definitely a different career path. I mean, you have some guys that are coming out at 24. 20,
yeah, no, for sure.
24, which is a really interesting to see. Definitely a different career path. And I think we've got Bill figured out. So
yes.
Welcome back, Bill.
There he is.
Hey, sorry, guys.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. We have substandard internet down here in Nova Scotia, right?
I'm not commenting on that. No. No, yeah. No, it's all good,
well,
guys.
Good to see you, Bill. Thanks for doing this for us. We haven't. You're our first guest on this show, and you're that for a reason. Kind of a journeyman that's been all over, not a traditional kind of career sort of to get to the pros, and I want to kind of go into that. But again, thanks for being here, and our listeners are going to be thrilled with some of the stuff I'm sure you can share. So I'll jump right in, Bill. Going back, so you're born. Were you raised in Cape Breton as a kid, or did you play minor hockey in Toronto? I know there's a little bit of both, right?
Yeah, no, I was born in Cape Breton in New Waterford, and when I was 2 or 3 years old, we moved to Toronto. So I grew up in Toronto, and I grew up in an area, a lot of hockey players came from, and so I'm kind of thinking that the guys that I ran into and played with were something special.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you take some time, folks, and look at Bill's hockey DB and dig in and look at some of the guys that he's suited up with, and it's absolutely incredible. So I go back. So Dixie Beehives to me is still one of the best names of a hockey team I've ever heard, and I played in that old Ontario league there with Wexford Raiders, a little bit after you, and. But that was a storied franchise, and then Streetsville. So in Dixie, you played with Brendan Shanahan. That's before he went to the O, right?
I did. Quick story, guys. I was 19 years old going to Dixie Beehives, and if you remember that movie Youngblood, that's when they were taping that. And I remember facing off to that guy with the beard, and I had no skin hair on my face, and like I said, I was a late bloomer, like not like today when guys are 16 and everybody knows who you are, and 18 and you're drafted and all that, but 19 and I'm facing off with this old Cooper SK 5000 on my head, and facing off against him. Yeah, that's where it started. And I started to develop at that age, and which is late in today's hockey, obviously, but yeah. Dixie Beehives, that rink, I'm sure, John, you played there a couple times.
I
that
did,
old Dixie.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was that league, I'll tell you, there was big boy hockey. I mean, it was, we'd play St. Mike's or Henry Carr on a Sunday night at Wexford at Scarborough Arena, and so the guys would be led out in handcuffs, right? There's fights in the stands and everybody's drunk, and that's the good old days, right? That's what we want. So there's a guy, and speaking of that league, that you played with on Dixie and Streetville, and I don't know if you remember him, Rich Dutton. Do you remember Rich?
I absolutely do remember him. Yes. Good quality character guy. Yeah.
Oh, he broke a Sherwood PMP in my ribs because I stepped on we were playing Henry Carr, and the warm up, right? No refs at that time. I put one skate blade on the red line as I came around, and then the next, I'm off the boat from Nova Scotia. I don't know these rules, right? And so he times it. I come back around. I'm kind of watching him because he said something, and I'm kind of watching him, and he times it. I come around my way. He comes around his way. And he broke his stick in like I thought I was going to die. And he said, "Stay on your own effing side, rookie." That was it. But he was a big, strong man.
He wasn't a small guy. No, Rich was pretty big. He's a big redhead guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he ended up being a referee, Bill, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I heard that he got into reffing junior at one point.
Yeah. I was talking to his coach.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was talking to his coach a couple days ago. You probably remember him, Cameron.
Which Cameron?
Coach of Henry Carr. Dan Cameron.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Were you? Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Torkoff was coaching him at one point too. Remember Mike Torkoff?
Yes.
He was an old school guy. He coached Mimico.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, he was assistant coach.
He was assistant coach in Dixie there.
Torkoff.
Larry Stern. Yeah.
Brian Collinson is another one. You remember him? I think he only played a couple games with you, defenseman. I ended up having a little stint with him with the Marlies as well. So a lot of 6 degrees to separation in the hockey world. So I want to go to the next one. So this one's real interesting to me because I've been in Saskatchewan for the last 10, 11 years until last year. So Humboldt. So you go to Humboldt. You get and these numbers are remarkable. 83 goals, 104 helpers. So you had 187 points that year. But the most remarkable one to me, I mean, that's unbelievable. But you had 300 minutes, right? So when did you find time to score?
Yeah, no, I mean, the way it is out there, John. It was a tough league in the late '80s out there, and that's when hockey was. I mean. Different, obviously, but we had a good team. The reason why I went out there is because I played with the Derbies, and if you remember, we went to the All Ontarios there, and our team got suspended for the upcoming season. We went right to the All Ontario finals. I mean, we were a tough team. We played, we fought, we did it all. But they suspended the organization for a year. So I said, I have to go to a good team here. And I got an opportunity to go to Humboldt, and I'm so glad I did. Boy, what a place to play. And, especially obviously, the tragic accident they had and all that stuff, but what a community, and a boy going, 20 years old and coming from Toronto and going to a farming community of 5,000. It was life lessons. It was special for sure.
You could walk in there right now into Humboldt and there'd be 50 opportunities for you to have a dinner at somebody's house, and then you could stay there. That's how that community is. So I coached with a guy. I coached with a guy, and our sons played together, and he's from Humboldt, and he's a little bit younger than us. So Johnny Clausen's his name. He's actually the head scout for Flin Flon in the SJ. He's got two boys that are going to be real good players, Cohen and Little Reichs. But anyway, so I asked Johnny. He grew up in Humboldt. So I asked Johnny. I said, Bill McDougall. So you remember him? He didn't bat an eye. He said, the best hockey player that ever played for the Humboldt Broncos. And that's a storied franchise, and numbers are numbers. But as a he's a kid fan. So if you're there when you're 20, he's probably 7 or 8, right? And that's what he said. And all the guys that you talk to, and I've talked to hockey guys every day, and I'm bringing Billy McDougall. Oh, beauty, best teammate ever is what what the word on the street is. And as a player, there's nothing that would mean more to you than to hear that, I bet, huh?
Yes, no, that's the ultimate compliment for sure. When your teammates look up to you, and you have a great rapport, and you can share and talk about stories for forever. I mean, it's that's.
So there's another Nova Scotian that played with you in Humboldt. Lives in from my hometown, from Dartmouth. You know who I'm talking about?
I do know who you're talking. There's 2 guys that played in Humboldt that are very close by around here, and I'll mention the other guy's name, Billy O'Brien.
Yeah, for sure. He's a Cape
Bay,
Bretonner, right?
Another Cape Bretonner, and the guy that you're thinking about, would it be Morgan Watts?
Morgan Watts, yeah. So I was talking to big. There's a big boy too, huh?
I remember he was like 6'5", and he was just like 250, and the team we had there, John, you probably remember, but geez, I mean, I think we went 56-4. We lost 4 games that year, but nobody would want to come into the rink with us.
No. Well, and for those of you that don't know, I mean, the SJ is still, killer coaches in Humboldt. You can imagine what that team, going into his rink and he coaches in Larange, and you can imagine trying to go in there and get 2 points, and it's tough. So I asked Morgan. I was talking to Morgan yesterday, and I told him you were coming on, and he said the first thing he said, second best player I ever played with. So I went, oh, okay. So I'm like, okay. So I kind of thought about it for a bit, and I messaged him back. I texted him back, and I said, who was the first? Well, it's another guy that we talked about earlier that he played with in London in the O, and it was Shanny, right?
Yeah.
It's just such a small world when you really dig in. But Humboldt, yeah, that's cool. And then just to add to what you mentioned, obviously the bus crash. I was in Toronto when that happened, and one of the guys that I worked with, his son was playing for Nipawin, and they were waiting for the bus. They were playing a home game against Humboldt that night, and I was at the Marche in Toronto with my daughters. We were going to watch the Leafs play, Leafs Montreal, and basically I get a text that the Broncos bus crashed and it's bad. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So the whole night for me was just like, obviously, looking at the internet and getting stuff. What I found, and I didn't have, a hundredth of the career that you had, traveling and the amount of teammates that you had. I found myself reaching out old teammates. I had players that I coached like in some junior leagues in the US that were reaching out to me when that happened. How you doing, coach? Or you reached out, and I think the whole hockey community was grieved and felt it. But I often wondered, you know, a guy like you that's, you know, a humble Bronco legend, how did you feel? Obviously awful, but can you put into words kind of what you went through when that happened?
Yeah, I mean, I started to get phone calls. I mean, after, because they were going on a road playoff game, right? So
Yep.
they were traveling. I think it was probably about. They were going to Nipawin, yeah. So it's about a 3-4 hour drive, but a lot wasn't released. But I started to get phone calls at around midnight and 1 o'clock, and starting a lot more details coming out. So yeah, I remember it vividly. It was it was. I just, geez, and you think, you know, when something like that happens, you think about all the times we've been on buses, John. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, like, especially, I mean, if you drove to prairies, and how many buses are traveling every night, and I mean, it's just crazy, you know, it's for something like that to happen, and but I remember it vividly that night, and getting phone calls, and you know, I was talking to Sheldon Kennedy. He got there the next day, and I played with him in Adirondack and Detroit. He had a great voice that, you know, really helped a lot there. And
absolutely. Yeah. Killer was there too. So Killer was coaching in Fresno, and he came back home to go to Churchbridge to, you know, I think he had he was coming for his golf tour. He didn't come back when the crash happened, but he went through and spent some time and went into the memorial and things like that. It just gripped, and it, you know, you hate for something like that to have to bring people together, but you know, it certainly did, and the memories of all these kids and the coaching staff, and here's another part that the average hockey fan or sports fan wouldn't have got, and I'm asking you, Bill, if so, when they first released, you know, they were saying it's bad, we don't know what's going on, we don't know how many people, but there's multiple fatalities because it hit the semi. I knew right away, because I was, you know, I'd coached quite a few years at that point. I knew right away. And I think I said to my daughter, who I was with, and I said, the coaching staff's gone, and all the rookies. I said, anybody that may make it are going to be veterans and second or third year players at the back of the bus. I said, the way that, you know, because you know, social media stuff gets released. So, and then just to think about that as a coach, and I immediately think of the families, right? I think of that coach's wife that sacrifices so much for him to be, you know, on the road and then come back, and then, you know, having to, you know, meet with the assistant coaches when you're on a downslide and he hasn't seen his kids, and it's a tough job, and not paid enough at that level, but you know, that's kind of the mindset that I kind of went through, and it was, you know, it was awful. I mean,
it just, like, not just touched Canada or North America, this touched the whole world when this happened.
Yeah.
And I mean, just everybody can relate. Like you said, you know, the mothers driving their kids to the rink. It just touched everybody around the hockey. And you and I both know hockey is a small world. It really is.
Absolutely.
And especially at the, you know, at that level, when you get to the junior and the pro ranks, it's a small world. We know, everybody knows everybody. And just like, you know, hearing that, and just, you just, everybody felt it. Didn't matter what their role is in the game, or a mother, a father, a brother, you know, a guy that sharpened skates. It just hit everybody.
Oh, absolutely. So let's move on here. You end up after that in Port aux Basques, Newfoundland. Okay. Now that's a town. There's got to be what, 8,000-10,000 people in the whole town.
Pretty close, yeah.
How many guys you'd sell at the rink? There'd be a couple, 2,000 or 3,000 people at a home game, wouldn't there?
They would be there before we got there. They would be at the rink lining up before we'd pull into the rink, and an hour and a half before, and they would be there already.
So I remember that team well, because I was still playing junior out here. I was back home, and you guys, One thing I want to ask you before we get into that playoff run, I read an article that the GM of Port aux Basques almost released you at the January 10th deadline that year. So in senior hockey and Canadian hockey, you basically have to put in your playoff roster by the end of, or the 10th of January. Tell me about that.
Yeah, what happened there? I had an injury, and I don't know. Do you remember a guy named Dan Cormier?
Yeah,
he played in Corner Brook. Yeah, but anyways, he grabbed me and we got into a fight. And anyways, breaking up the fight, the linesman stepped on my hand, right?
Oh.
So it cut my hand pretty good, and I was bleeding profusely and all that. And they, the way with the import rule, kind of, they had like 5 guys or whatever. But so my hand wasn't going to be ready. So that was probably like really close, within days of happening.
Yeah.
And my hockey career probably would have been over at that day right there.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah.
So then you guys go on a run, win the Newfoundland League, which you want to talk about big boy hockey. Was Terry Ryan Sr. playing in that league when you were there?
He was coaching. Yeah, he was coaching the Mount Pro team. Yeah.
But they used to fly guys from here, like Robbie Forbes,
just for the weekend.
Timmy Cranston, guys like that. They'd fly into Corner Brook for the weekend from over here, and they'd go over just to to play. But there was a guy. So I watch you. So you guys win the Newfoundland, and then you got to come over here and play a 7-game series in Dartmouth. Is that the same year, or am I off?
Yeah,
okay,
that's correct. Yeah.
So you guys come over, and I had a lot of friends on that Dartmouth Moosehead Mountie team, and I was at 3 or 4 of those games. There was only 5. So you guys came in, and you got pumped in the first game. I don't know. I forget the score, but I was there. It was 7-2, 8-2, something like that. Just hammered. And then the boys were literally sizing their rings. Okay. Now I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. But the story. So anybody that that wasn't around then, Port aux Basques then absolutely shit pumps Dartmouth in the next 4. I don't think that Dartmouth Moosehead Mounties were then 5 or 6 goals. It was 8-1, 9-0, boom, 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 4 in a row. Now, I heard back then, and I've never heard the contrary, that you guys were you finished the Newfoundland series and you got to take the bus on the boat from Port aux Basques to Sydney and then drive to Dartmouth. And I heard there was a lot of alcohol involved, and basically you guys were all either hungover or still impaired when you played that game 1. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, there wasn't much sleep on that ferry going across. I can tell you that's for sure. And I do remember it well. Yeah, we were pretty tired, but yeah. And I mean, senior hockey, I think I was 21, 22 years old. Yeah. So a lot of guys, there were some real good character guys. I had good hockey guys. Bill Riley. There were some real good people on that team, but yeah, we pulled it together and we ended up winning. I guess that would be the Allen Cup. The Hardy Cup.
It was the Hardy Cup. Yeah. So Joe West, and I asked you about this. We were texting the other day. There was a guy, and I know he's from Manitoba. I never really heard of him after that, but I remember watching him, and he would come in on a one-on-one. He was skilled, man. This guy was unbelievable.
Under the bar every time.
And he would yell at the defenseman. He'd come in on a one-on-one, and he would yell at the defenseman, "I'm going to go around you. You're shit. I'm going around you." And then he'd toe drag the guy, and then he'd go bar down. Right? And why didn't this guy have a big career, Bill?
Yeah, he went to Northern Michigan University on a scholarship, and he left after 2 years, and had a little stint in the minors in the IHL. But a guy that could score, man, this guy could score like anything around the net. I compare him to a player like a Martin St. Louis. He was small, but he had that big stick. And he was just so quick. He would dart in, but he ended up going to Germany, and he played a lot of years in Germany. Yeah, I still talk to him. Today. Yeah, no, he was. I remember being amazed by this guy. And anyway, so Port aux Basques, they come over, and then you get an opportunity, and you go to the coast. Who were you with? Was it Erie? Erie Panthers. Yeah, Erie Panthers.
80 goals and 68 apples in like 50 games or 48 games or something like
57
that.
games.
80 goals. And I'm going to ask you another name. And I didn't see that you ever played with him. But there is a guy that I was with in Switzerland in Zurich Grasshoppers after the lockout in 94 that I think is the only guy that scored more than that, and it was Trevor Job.
Yes, I think you're right on that one. Yeah, he could score, that guy. Yeah.
He had 95 goals in the East Coast League. And I think that the second highest was you, and you played about 30 less games than he did. But he was something. He was something else. Yeah. He could snipe, and he used a stick that was over his head, and he'd swap it out in the last 5 minutes, so he didn't get a penalty because they
he's a Western boy too, right, John?
Yeah. You know who he played a line? He played on a line in Prince Albert with Mike Medano and Darren Kimball. Pretty good line. Jeez. Yeah. That was a junior line in PA. Yeah.
That was, after playing senior hockey, playing senior hockey, then I went to Erie there, and I said, you know what? Okay, listen, I got to do something there, and I got to move on, right? And I said, I give myself to Christmas, but I'll tell you a quick story. We're going to an exhibition game, and of all places, we're driving from Erie to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, right? And I look at this bus we're getting on. It's a 1965 MC1 or MCI or whatever. And it's got all bunks in it, John, right? And we're driving down the highway, and I guess the back wheels blew, right? And they came right up through the floors of the bus. And if you got bunks on the bus, the narrow, you're going down sideways trying to get out, right? So we end up going to the ditch, and there's smoke everywhere, and people are saying, it's going to blow, it's going to blow. But like going to Johnstown, right? Okay. And we get outside the bus, and then our coach, GM, owner, Ron Hanses, starts arguing with this big tow truck driver, how are you going to get us to the game? And they're arguing over price. And I said, oh my God, can I do this? I don't know if I can do this, but I stuck around, and that night we go into Johnstown. You're in, slap shot rink, and it was fight after fight after fight. And I said, that's enough. I kind of thought, and I said, that's enough. But I stuck around, and I signed with Detroit at Christmas time. So I'm glad I stuck around because, obviously things went okay. But that's just another story. I mean, craziness.
Well, for sure. And I'm gonna hand it over to Brent now. Brent, you had a couple of questions about sort of when he got into his pro career, and let's go there now. This is fantastic.
Yeah. So as a young guy, just got out of juniors myself, but I wanted to know what it was like going from senior directly to pro hockey, and then within less than a year, you were in the NHL. That's like a crazy career path in general. Like looking at it from like a young guy standpoint, senior hockey isn't really something that we see a whole lot of anymore. So I was just wondering, what was that like? What was that like? Was it a call? What was your welcome?
I mean, obviously in a different time, that would never happen now, right? But it was, I'm watching guys on TV, and I'm playing senior hockey. Then all of a sudden, a year later, like you said, I'm, on a line with Steve Yzerman and Fedorov and Lidstrom and hanging out with those guys and eating with those guys every day. I never ever thought it would happen, but it happened so quick. It happened fast in the year in Erie. Really, when I got called up from Erie, Adirondack, Detroit's farm team had some injuries, and Bill Dineen, the late Bill Dineen, great hockey mind, he said to Ronnie Hans, he says, we need him to fill in for a couple of days. That's it. We're not signing him. I went up there, scored 3 goals first game against New Jersey's farm team. But yeah, it just happened. Everything just happened so quick. And, all of a sudden, the guys I was watching, I was hanging out with. And so it happened quick, and you just had to adjust and, pretend. I tried to pretend I was one of those guys. I didn't think I was, but, it just happened so quick. You had to, roll with the punches, and it was an awesome ride.
And obviously hanging out with those guys, being around those guys, and obviously ultimately stepping foot on the ice in the NHL. Everyone has one that's played there. What was your welcome to the NHL moment? Like what made you go, wow?
First game I got called up, but we're playing in Baltimore, and I'm with Detroit's Farming Team Adirondack. The late Brian Murray comes. He was at the game, and Barry Melrose, our coach, said, "Listen, they're coming down there. They'll be watching. I have not have a good game, but he goes, I'm going to tell you." And that's the way Barry was. And after the game, Brian and Doug McLean called me in and to the room and said, "Can you play in the NHL?" And I said, "Yeah, I know I can." Right. Where that came from, I don't know, but that's my first words. I just spatted those out, and driving in the car from Baltimore to Washington and jumping on a flight and arriving in Detroit and waiting for my baggage with Mr. Murray and Mr. McLean and
Wow.
The three of us, and I had my stick. We were on a road trip. Obviously, we were in Baltimore, and it was a long road trip, and so Mr. Coach Murray grabs my sticks, and three of us, and you're walking through Detroit Airport. They know who Brian Murray is, So it was that's when it really came surreal right there.
Wow. Yeah, that's got to be a pretty cool moment there, and obviously you kind of moved on from Detroit after that year, and somehow you ended up with Edmonton and played a little bit there, and then ultimately ended up in Tampa, where you had your longest stint. What was it like being more of a regular part of the team in the NHL? Like, obviously you're a young guy still, but you were getting a little bit more time on the ice, obviously getting a little bit more leeway there, here and there. So what was that kind of like to transition, kind of be like, okay, I'm here?
Yeah, I mean, I remember in training camp there, and I remember Espo saying, and Phil saying to me, it's your job to lose. And, because I was always the guy that I'd get called up for a couple games and maybe play one game and be up there for 4 or 5, then back down and that kind of thing. But, Espo said it was my job to lose. And after Cape Breton there, and I remember him telling me, "Okay, Bill, you made the team. You can go find a house to live in." And that was probably, it was the only time in my career that, in the NHL that, GM said, "Hey, go find a place to live. You're here." So, that was the second year with Tampa when they came into the league. We had not a great team, and a lot of guys that have been in the same situation as me, up and down. But yeah, I mean, things obviously didn't work out there, but it was just another part of my journey, and learning and learning how to cope and dealing with other things. But yeah, that's the way it went.
Just to backtrack before you went to Tampa, and for our listeners and viewers, here's another remarkable stat line. So Calder Cup playoffs, I think 92, 93. And you end up so you're in Edmonton for a bit, and then you end up in Cape Breton, where, like we talked about at the beginning, you're a Cape Breton guy, right? You're a kid that was born there, probably visited as a kid, went home, met your family and whatnot. Now you end up with the Cape Breton Oilers, and you guys go on a run. And so here's a stat line from that year: 16 games played in the playoffs. 26 goals, 26 helpers for 52 points. I checked tonight. Still, by far, the single playoff Calder Cup championship playoff run hasn't been touched in now would be 30 years, right? It'd be 30 years this year from that run.
That long ago, eh? We're getting old. Getting old.
Yeah. But that's heavy. I mean, that's, what teams did you play in that run? Who did you play against?
Yeah, so we played Montreal's team, Fredericton, right off the hop there. And, I mean, during the season, we were just like neck and neck with each other, 500 clubs. And then we went on to play next round. We played Springfield, I believe.
Yeah.
No, sorry, we played St. John's the next round.
Okay,
which was
Maple Leafs.
Probably the best team in the Maritime Division. Yeah, the Leafs team had a really, really good team. A lot of, Mark Crawford was a coach there, and I remember him screaming at the end of it.
Yeah.
But then we went to Springfield. Then we played Rochester in the final. So, I mean, that was a team. We had a lot of guys in the team that were there John, you probably remember this because the Oilers went to Halifax first in the American Hockey League.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of guys that were there right from day one, and all their contracts are up, their entry levels, and it was almost like we kind of sat down and I remember it well, and just said, okay, most of our deals are up. We're going to be moving on, right? A lot of guys in previous to that, since the playoffs came, they wanted to lose four straight, but they wanted to get out and go home, you know. But we all said, listen, we're all free agents now. Listen, we'll never ever play again together. All of this group right here, we've been together. Most of those guys are 3-4 years, moving from the team from Halifax to Sydney, and you know, that year we had a lot of guys that were up and down with the Oilers that, you know, they didn't really have a good team up there. So they were trying guys out and stuff like that. But it was a character team with a lot of good hockey players, a lot of good guys. And we just came together. And I mean, I think our record was 14-2, and just a lot of good guys. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking at the roster here. You know, Sean Van Allen, big career. Steve Rice, Scott Thornton, Kirk Maltby. Kirk Maltby was on that club. I didn't know that.
Kirk Maltby was just a rookie, yeah.
And then there's a guy that I ran into in a bar in Sudbury, Ontario, and that didn't end well for me. Mark LaForge, yeah. At the City Lights, right across from the hotel in Sudbury. We were playing them on the Sunday, and we snuck out and Saturday night, and I got punched out by him. Al McIsaac from Antigonish. McIsaac from Antigonish. He was an assistant. John Brophy mentored him in the East Coast League, and he ended up GM in Norfolk for Chicago, and then he was an assistant GM in Chicago when they won 3.
For a long time, yeah.
Al McGinnis' brother Rob, another senior hockey legend from this neck of the woods too. He played some pretty big minutes. I think Rob played with Morgan Watts at one point in senior. So that's awesome.
And for the viewers' sake, that playoff run and Bill's stat line there was good enough to win the Jack A. Butterfield Trophy. And for anyone that's not familiar with the American Hockey League too closely, anyways, some of the more recent winners, you might hear of guys like Tyler Bertuzzi, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Carey Price, Robin Leonard, Thomas Tatar, and the list goes on. But like that's not something to kind of sniff at. That's a really cool accomplishment, and there's some really, really cool that's some really cool company to be in when you kind of look back at that list, and you can say you won that. That's really cool, Bill.
No, thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, John.
Toughest guy you ever fought at any level?
Probably like I didn't want to fight him, but Roberts. Those Roberts brothers were
nuts.
Oh my God!
Mario or Serge? Which one, Mario or Serge?
Both. But Mario was more my size, where I could probably maybe like get beat up a little bit less. But
they played for Portabasque too, but not
they
with
did
you,
play
right?
For Portabasque, yeah. A story in Halifax. I don't know if you're around there then, John, but John Cordick fought Serge, and I mean he was cut from one eye to the other, went in and got stitched up, and then came out and he lined up with Kevin McClellan, and fought him. Like that's
yeah, and
it's crazy.
And if you think about some of the players that played in Halifax that just before that with the Citadel, Greg Smith, God rest his soul, right? Bird was here, Darren Kimball was here, Jacques Mayotte, Jocko. I mean, this was tough down here, right? Yeah. They like that kind of hockey. Oh.
Yeah, no, they do like it, and now with the Quebec League, trying to, with the fighting and stuff. So it's,
What do you think of that? I talked about it earlier before you came on and kind of said my piece, but what are your thoughts?
I just don't. It's been part of hockey from day one. I just don't. You're going to see 5-minute sticking penalties a lot more. That's the way. That's the only thing. Listen, it's something. There's only one thing. Like now we see in our game when you get hit real hard, one of your teammates are going to step up and fight. That's one thing I don't agree with. If it's a clean hit, I mean, hey, how many like in our day, John, you get somebody's, and we used to say the trolley tracks. There's no getting out of it. You're going to get hit.
Or if your goalie gets run because he comes out to play the puck, you're not gonna go after the guy. He shouldn't have come out to play the puck. The difference I see though, Bill, is it's so much faster now and split second, right? And I was telling the boys this last week or the week before, and when you see your teammate out of the corner of your eye and he's down and there's a guy that's been a headhunter, sometimes it's just I think it's so fast now. I really do. But I agree. I mean, if it's a clean body check and the hands are down and you don't leave your feet, that's part of the game. I agree. You shouldn't have to answer the bell. Yeah. They need to use the instigator rule then, right? That's a good time to use it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Again, the game is so fast. I mean, you hit somebody. You remember the old Jofa elbow pads, John? Yeah. Those were like cement. Imagine the way the guy skates today, and you're running into a guy, and you're maybe 3 inches taller than him, and you kind of come up and you hit him. His life is over.
Oh yeah. Well, I just wore the little Joffa, the Gretzky Joffas, all I ever wore, and you get that elbow pad on that, and it's you're concussed for sure. Kevin Kaminsky. Kevin's going to come on our show here one of these days. Tell me something about Killer. Yeah, I know you guys are buddies, and Geez, I went to Humboldt, and he was in Saskatoon with the Blades, with that real tough team, Twist, Clark. Wendell was there,
Yeah, that was Wendell's last year. But I got to watch him in Humboldt. There's that everybody's family kind of with the Blades there, and all the same guys grew up playing each other. But with Kevin, I mean, competitor, do anything to win. That mentality, and he was just, every time that you're on the ice with him, you had to know where he was. But unbelievable guy off the ice, and all he does for his charity, it's nothing. I can't say enough with the guy. I love the guy.
Yeah, me too, man. I'll tell you, there's a guy that his on ice persona is absolutely nothing about. He's a kind, caring, loves his family, looks after his friends. If you need something, you call that guy. He's got your back. 1,000%. Sure. Another guy that I know that and I spent a little bit of time with him here, and he's got an interesting story. I'm hoping to get him on as well. Started the brawl in the 87 Piastani series. First fight, Everett Sanapes, another East Coaster.
Yeah. Yes, New Brunswick, yeah. I talked to Everett the odd time, another good man. And I remember we talked about a story, one of the first exhibition games with Detroit, and we're playing in Chicago Stadium. I don't know if you've been in that rink, John, but oh, geez. And it was an exhibition game, and we got Probert, Dennis Viel, Jim Cummins, Mark Potvin. I don't know, there's about 7-8 fighters in the lineup. For whatever reason, going into Chicago Stadium, I don't know why you'd need them, but it was, and Evie was on their team. We talked about it. There was just fight after fight at Chicago Stadium.
Cam Russell was there too, wasn't he? GM of the Halifax Mooseheads. Yeah.
Yes, he was on that team as well. Yeah, but that was the old. I mean, geez,
good old days, huh?
I would have liked today's game. I would have liked to grow up in today's game when all the finesse, and I guess I had a little finesse, and I certainly didn't have any big fists.
Well, you know what? I've said that a number of times. As you know, Bill, I got a little guy who's just turned 9, Jack, and he's loving it, and I'm glad the game isn't what we came up with, honestly, because I don't know if I'd send him away to play junior with some of the stuff that I know happened, in the 70s and 80s and even the 90s. So, I'm enjoying the ride. This is, my youngest and last one, and we're having a ball with it. He's helping me. We launched a new power skating program in Atlantic, Canada with Charlie Bourgeois, and called the Perfect Edge. And Jack, we launched yesterday here in Dartmouth, and Jack had his little tracksuit and came on and helped me with the little guys. So that's real special to be able to share that with him, So, yeah.
Awesome, buddy. Nice. Really nice.
Yeah.
And so before we wrap it up here, obviously we only talked about really half of your career. After
we'll have to bring him on again.
Yeah. But you went out to, I guess you went across the pond, and you played for a while out there up until about 2001, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So what was that transition like going over to, I think you went to Italy first, right?
I did. Yeah. So, I went to Italy. I just said, you know what, I'm tired of riding the buses. And, if I was going to be a full-time NHLer, that would have been my year at coming out of Cape Breton and having that great playoff and the great season. And I said, you know what, it's time. And so I went to Italy. I had a really good time. Growing up in Toronto, I grew up in an Italian area, so there was always a lot of guys that were called Italos, and they went over there and played, the guys that played junior and stuff like that. But that was good. And then I moved on to Switzerland. I had the best years of my life. Swiss hockey has come so far, guys, and I'm sure that you guys aware that you could see in the World Championships and in the Olympics and stuff. But when I went there, they were like a B pool team. Right. And now they are absolutely, the top 4 or 5 guys that I played with. Patrick Fisher, is the national team coach. And so, I mean, Swiss hockey, what a place to play too, guys. I don't know you've probably seen pictures and everything like that, but what a place. No travel. It's the number 1 destination for guys that are at the end of their career. Whether it be like a minor league player that did well and kind of up and down, but that's the place to go to. And the hockey is great. The people are great. There's no travel. Your farthest road trip is a 2.5 hour bus ride.
Wow.
So
and it's skilled. It's it's a high level, a real high level of hockey. I saw it over there, and I mean, to play, you put, what were you, 37, 38 when you retired? Is around there? Is that about right? Or
right around there, like 35-ish, and a couple injuries late there. But it's just I had a great time there. And in Germany too, the hockey with the DL, that's wide open. So many guys over there, and but it's been a great run.
Yeah. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Great run. I wish I could tell. It is a PG show, right? I'm not going to tell any other stories, all right?
Oh yeah, no, we can tell whatever we want, right?
It's just a great time.
We'll get you on another time, and we'll make sure it's an explicit one.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Bill there last week. I'm going to get up to Cape Breton and play golf with them this summer. We got a couple camps that we're working on doing. Maybe what we'll do, Bill, is get Brent to come and we'll take some video and have some fun chirping on the golf course and share it on the show. I think that'd be kind of, the Spit and Chicklets guy do, the Wit and Biz take on a couple of guys. Maybe Brent and I could take on you and a buddy, and we'll go out and have a good time doing that. That'd be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And I know, John, you mentioned that you haven't golfed Cabot at all.
I haven't.
But
nope.
What a special place it is. And the best thing is being and working there and all that stuff, and getting to know getting to see who comes in there. The hockey players that come in there, I can name probably about 100 and 150 guys that were in there last summer. And this
I know
year
Sid and Nathan and Marshy will helicopter up there for a couple of days.
Sid and Nate, they have a place there, right?
Yeah.
So that helicopter comes in quite frequently every day. But the guys that come in there, we've had 40,000 bookings already for this summer.
Wow.
40,000. Yeah. So it's quite the place, and that would be a great idea. We could do something like that for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. Yeah.
And awesome. So one last question about the European leagues. The first thing that jumped off the page looking at didn't look like your production went down too much, but the penalty minutes dipped quite a bit over there. Is that indicative of the style of play over there, or did that just come with age?
It came with age. Yeah. For me, you know what? I always had to be involved in the game, and I had to be playing at my blood pressure was going through the roof. And once, it's almost like Marchand and the way he plays. He has to play with an edge. And when you stop playing with an edge, you're so used to playing that way your whole life and, taking care of yourself. I wasn't a big fighter, but when guys are coming at me, I like to get involved with the stick and all that stuff. But yeah, there was a different type of hockey. And I mean, it's almost like just watching NHL now, where it's totally different from the 80s and 90s.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what, when you think back and you reflect back on Billy McDougall's career, obviously, we've just chronicled, dozens of things that any one of us would love to be able to say that they've done. Any regrets, Bill? Any regrets? Is there something that maybe you would have liked to go back and change?
No regrets whatsoever. The way it happened, I no regrets whatsoever. And I remember, going to Erie that year, and my mother, she said, "No regrets." I said, "I'll give it to Christmas time, Mom. That's it. And it's time to move on." But yeah, no regrets. I wouldn't change a thing. I had the time of my life playing a game I love, and meeting so many good.
Yeah, you get to play at the highest level, and that's just
so many good
something that we all wish.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. It's been great, guys.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Hey, Brent, do you want to wrap it up with Bill? And hey, we'll set something up for the summer. I'm looking forward to getting up there. And don't forget to shoot me a text when you're in town this way too. We'll have a beer.
I'll tell you what. I'll give you a little heads up when Nate and Sid are coming in. All right, maybe we can do it with them.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, Bob.
All right.
Yeah. Well.
Okay, guys. Take care.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, guys. Have a good night, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that was the great Bill McDougall. That was an excellent interview there. He's got lots of cool stories, and I'm sure if we get him on again, we'll have a little more fun with it and maybe do some stuff this summer.
Yeah, great guy. Just like I said earlier, anybody that I've talked to about Bill, I never, was fortunate enough to play with him, but I know a lot of people that have, and, everybody says the same thing, just a team guy, do what it takes to win. I mean, he'd score, he had penalty minutes. He, went from the minors to the bigs and back and Europe. And then, I knew he was going to answer that, but I had to ask it about the regrets, and I knew what he'd say, right? Good guy, real good guy. Those are the types of guys that, to me, that, when you talk about a hockey player's hockey player, Bill McDougall, right? He's a guy that kind of, he paved the way for a lot of guys to believe in themselves, because if you tell his story, really, like we just did, somebody can sit back and go, "Hey, man, you know what? I'm never out of this," right? I might be playing double-A midget right now, but I'm gonna dig deep and go and do what I can to make it, and he did. So
and what, for a guy like me that's done his junior career and would like to still play hockey, that's a pretty cool career path that he has to get to the NHL playing
inspirational,
and senior hockey,
and a real humble good guy, real humble good guy. So good on him. That's awesome. So
yeah, I don't think we got anything else. We kind of covered most of the league-wide news before we brought Bill on. But next week, we'll have probably some more interesting and in-depth takes on the entire NHL as we get closer to the playoffs.
And we may have a guest on for a little interview next week, too. We're working on something pretty big here. So we'll stay tuned and certainly follow our socials. Give us any feedback if you want to hear something. If there's something that you want to hear us talk about, we'd love to get messages. On Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you are.
Any suggestions that you have at all, we're kind kind of open. We're making this show for you guys. So we really enjoy hearing what you guys have to say. And before we go, I just want to give a quick shout out to Old City Sports. Make sure you go check out all the good stuff that they have going on over there on the website. Lots of cool stuff. And in terms of shows and stuff, I mean, there's tons of stuff. And we got lots of stuff going on all the time. Jonny Mac's working on bringing in interviews constantly. And we don't want to spoil it, but there's some pretty big names floating around out there. So we'll see what we get for you
Stay
guys.
tuned.
Stay tuned. Thanks.
Have a good week, Clem. We'll see you next week, folks.